Cyberpunk 2077 does not care what you think. Now let me immediately clarify who's included in that ominous "you" tag. That would be the easily offended, the always angry, the mainstream journalist with bad intentions, and every single other publisher in gaming. Articles like this one continue to be written, continue to try and drag this game down from the heights it's placed itself upon, and that is bewildering to me, mostly because we should almost in exclusivity be praising this game for having the goal to do so much right that so much of the industry seems content on not even touching. So I figured now was as good a time as any to take a look at Cyberpunk 2077. At every single way it's been ridiculously torn down, and every single way it should be being lifted up instead. I do not know how good or bad the final game will be, but what I can tell you, and what I'm going to attempt to show you, is that it's absolutely worthy of at least a little praise, even before we get our hands on the game. For the very least, for what it's attempting to do for the industry, and how it's attempting to push the industry forward, both morally, ethically, and from a game standpoint. For this particular piece, I wanted to put the focus on the gameplay, instead of the editing or any distractions at all. So it's mostly going to be uncut, simply because I feel like it's the most important bit of context for all of these faux issues. A look at what this game is actually supposed to be, since context is key for every single problem people seem to have. And indeed, it does start with, you guessed it, context. Cyberpunk isn't coming out of nowhere. It's the follow-up to maybe the most pervasive and ubiquitously loved game of this generation in The Witcher 3. But The Witcher 3 set a precedent for CD Projekt Red and the open world genre. It's easy to forget just how idiosyncratic and unique The Witcher 3 was, as its luster seemed to outshine everything underneath that game's surface. But it was a $60 release, a massive game with hundreds of hours of content in the game, at launch by the way, a game whose DLC wasn't just reasonably priced, but substantive and well worth that price and weight, and a game that never once asked for $1 of your money inside of your actual gameplay experience. And finally, a game that focused on nothing but the single player experience. Well, why is this context important? Well, that's simple. It has laid the foundation for everything that Cyberpunk is already getting oh so right. One of the first problems that popped up was character. Far too many people were upset about the way Cyberpunk approaches character creation. There are no gender roles in the game. You can pick and choose your body and voice as you please. Why? Because this is the future, where cybernetics will make body parts and body changes as easy as buying and selling luxury clothing. This is the future of Cyberpunk. It wasn't a decision made to please or anger, it was made, as the team has said, because it very much fits and suits the context of the actual game. But this one got worse, when it was revealed that the cutscenes of the game would all be in first person, a decision that the devs say had been in place from day one. Yet this upset people because they believed it made these controversial character options totally negligible anyway, so you won't be able to see any of the customization. Therefore, they felt as though CD Projekt Red was riding a line attempting to please people without actually showing any of the ramifications of those choices. Yet what I believe we should be acknowledging is that the entire point of an RPG is role-playing and immersion. It is a role-playing game. Immersion is the touchstone, the cornerstone, the foundation of this genre. By keeping you in first person at all times, you constantly feel like you're in control and that you are your character. It keeps you immersed and involved in the action. Better still, I find it impossible to believe anyone at all, actually has a problem with a developer going, you know what, create whatever you want. Too many games pigeonhole your character creation and make the process a chore. For once, a game is giving us the chance to do quite literally whatever we want. That is absolutely a step in the right direction, both from an immersion standpoint and from simply a character creation standpoint. Let's start talking about the really important stuff. I've heard people refer to CD Projekt Red as bullies recently. As stupid as that is, let's at least examine the context of this complaint. This studio has repeatedly taken shots at the industry's biggest publishers and developers, and they haven't been shy about it at all. I'm here to tell you, we should be supporting this behavior, not condemning it. I'm not going to go over every example, but I will say that recently CD Projekt Red has spoken out about how they are going to monetize Cyberpunk, and they've been very clear about where they stand. They have called the post-launch monetization trend disgusting. They've called microtransactions insulting, and they've made one thing abundantly obvious. They absolutely will not be implementing microtransactions or loot boxes into their game. Cyberpunk 2077 will be microtransaction free. You won't be buying any car paint, and you won't be opening any loot boxes, and even more poignant, you'll be playing alone. Cyberpunk isn't going to implement a multiplayer mode into the game simply to proffer another way for you to spend your money. The Cyberpunk experience will be entirely self-contained within your original $60 purchase. But they've also been a staunch advocate for the consumer in other ways. While a lot of the PC space is looking long and hard at Epic and taking exclusivity deals that often spit in the face of consumers that have already pre-ordered the game in question elsewhere, CD Projekt Red has spoken out against exclusivity as anti-consumer and once again made it very clear that the companies engaging in this behavior are not the companies they want to model themselves after. And that again, Cyberpunk will not be one of those games. This is not Cyberpunk or CD Projekt Red believing that their game or themselves are above the rest of the industry. They don't believe that they are the studio or they have the game that everybody should be modeling theirs after. Instead, they're taking a stand for what they believe in, which happens to be the consumer, and speaking out against bad practices. How anybody can view that negatively is beyond me, but the point is that this is one way that the studio is once again putting Cyberpunk in a place where it should at least have a chance to succeed. They've also made it clear that they trust gamers to be able to think for themselves, and more importantly, they have no interest in shying away from completing their vision as they see fit. And this is the most important facet of this game, in my opinion, thus far. Take the controversy in which a poster showed a trans model. People were upset because it looked as though they were using a group of people as a tool within their game, when in reality, that's just a part of their world. The ability to change and shift your body, the normalization of transition, that's their vision, and they didn't back down, they defended that vision multiple times. Better yet, the slum island filled with individuals of seemingly Haitian descent, people were upset that they weren't a different group of people. What did CD Projekt Red do? They didn't back down or change their vision, they again defended it, making it clear that not only did journalists not have context, but that this is their story and they are going to tell it their way. They made it clear that they weren't worried about broaching the subject of religion and weren't concerned about hurting anyone's feelings because they have a world to build and a story to tell, and not broaching these matters would be a disservice to that storytelling. Every step of the way, this developer has made one thing clear. They are making their game, and they don't care if you don't like it. They don't care if your feelings are hurt. They are treating their game as art, like they should be. And it's clear with the way they handle its criticisms. So many developers, so many publishers are focused on products over design and vision and storytelling that they lose sight of the fact that good art makes you think, good art challenges you, and good art may not always agree with you. Look, it's really easy to tear down products before we get them in our hands, but we need to make sure that the product or its creators have given us a good reason to be concerned first. Just like praise, criticism has to be earned. It needs to be substantiated, and almost none of Cyberpunk's criticism thus far has been grounded in fact and, more importantly, context. It almost seems at times like far too many people are looking to bring this game down due simply to the fact that there's a studio that isn't bending to their will and desires. It's as though the hype for Cyberpunk has reached peaks that make it cool to hate it or dislike it. This game is coming from a studio that might be the only in gaming that deserves pre-release faith, and yet their vision is constantly being called into question before they get the chance to show what they have. But I think we have to remember that this studio is staying true to their vision, and that's a good thing. Something the rest of the industry seems content to give up on. This is a studio that is giving the middle finger to basically everybody else working in the industry that's doing everything that consumers don't want them to do. That's doing everything to get on top of gamers instead of stand next to them. And yet, because Cyberpunk makes some decisions that maybe doesn't agree with how we feel or the way we think about the world, it's a problem? If everything that didn't agree with us was wiped off the face of the earth, it'd be a pretty boring world, wouldn't it? That is it for today's video. As always, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think any of these complaints so far about Cyberpunk are valid criticism? There's nothing wrong if you do. It's totally okay to disagree with my opinion. Yours is just as valid as mine, but I'm genuinely curious as to any problems you see with this game thus far. Anything you've seen that have caused you to have concern? Are you going to buy this game at launch? And I think most important for me, is Cyberpunk 2077 the game you were hoping to see CD Projekt Red follow up The Witcher with, or were you hoping to get a new Witcher game or something else entirely? Let me know down in the comments below the answer to any and all those questions. As always, if you enjoyed this video, press the like button. If you haven't yet, press subscribe, do that as well. Also, next to the subscribe button is a little bell. All that little bell does is make sure that you're actually notified when a video comes out. So if you press that little bell, you actually know when I upload. So press subscribe and the little bell next to that subscribe button. I hear a lot of your comments, guys, don't worry. I know the Gears video has not come yet. There are just a lot of things I wanted to talk about first. To be totally honest with you, I just recently did like an hour-long documentary on this channel about the first Gears of War, breaking down the entire game, how it was made, why it was designed the way it was. So I'm a little gearsed out right now, so I'm trying to make sure I go into this game unbiased, refreshed, ready for more Gears of War. So it might take a little bit longer. I just don't want to rush that video out or jump into it when I'm not feeling it, because I don't want to kind of not give it a fair shake. So anyways, that'll come when it comes, and until next time, guys, I'm out.